This podcast episode is brought to you by Coors Light. These days, everything is go, go, go. It's nonstop hustle all the time. Work, friends, family, expect you to be on 24/7. Well, sometimes you just need to reach for a Coors Light because it's made to chill. Coors Light is cold lagered, cold filtered, and cold packaged. It's as crisp and refreshing as the Colorado Rockies. It is literally made to chill. Coors Light is the one I choose when I need to unwind. So when you want to hit reset, reach for the beer that's made to chill. Get Coors Light in the new look delivered straight to your door with Drizzly or Instacart. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado.
This week on the timeline, Ryan McDonough was fired and Robert Sarver might be crazy. We also bring on AZCentral's Duane Rankin. Sam, it happened. It finally happened. Oh, man. We had to record. This was a planned podcast, but we would have done an emergency podcast anyway because both the team of Shams Charania and Woj reported that Robert Sarver has fired Ryan McDonough. Sam Cooper, how are you doing?
Doing well. I'm conflicted, Mike. I actually don't know. I don't know how I'm doing today at all. This news broke in the morning, and all day I've been thinking about it.
Me too. I've been looking forward to recording this podcast literally all day. I've been thinking about how we're going to talk about it and what I really think about it, and I've been conflicted too. It's been all over the place, and then Robert Sarver goes on Burns and Gambo, a local radio show, and gives almost no answers. It was almost like hearing a political interview, like just somebody trying to pivot away from actually answering questions and try and give the most vague and uninteresting answers as possible, which is probably the smart thing for him to do. But it didn't give us a lot of information about what this was about. But let's cover it from the top. So, basically, out of the blue, a bomb was dropped. Phoenix Suns have fired general manager Ryan McDonough. Now, Ryan McDonough has had an up and down tenure with the team, but there has been no reactions of why was he fired. Nobody has really said that the reactions have more been based around why was he fired right now. And I'm going to call for an ISO right away. I hate to do this right off the bat, but spread the floor, Sam. I'm just going to go over why he was fired. Here we go. On July 10th, 2013, McDonough trades for Eric Bledsoe. On July 12th, 2014, McDonough signs Isaiah Thomas. The Suns go on to play a three-point guard lineup that causes the national media to laugh, even though it proved to be an effective lineup, especially offensively. Dragic then asks to be traded after saying he was made promises that were never kept, and he no longer trusted the front office. On February 19th, 2015, Dragic and Isaiah Thomas were traded for Brandon Knight and picks. Brandon Knight is eventually signed to a massive contract and plays badly in his time with the Suns. On July 9th, 2015, the Morris twins saga begins in earnest when McDonough brings in Marcus Morris to join his brother Markieff. The twins are signed to joint contracts, in quotes. Marcus is eventually traded after the Morris twins bring drama and technical fouls to Phoenix. Markieff was mad about it. On February 1st, 2016, McDonough fires Jeff Hornacek and hires Earl Watson. On February 18th, Markieff Morris was traded, ending the saga that included throwing a towel at the coach, fighting a teammate on the bench, and disparaging the fans. On October 22nd of 2016, Earl Watson is then fired. He did all of these things while drafting Alex Len, Dragan Bender, and Marquise Chris with top 10 picks, but he also drafted Devin Booker, Josh Jackson, and DeAndre Ayton. And without that Devin Booker draft, it's easy to wonder how he would be perceived right now. Sam, what's your initial reaction to this firing?
Well, I'm not necessarily a defender of Ryan McDonough. We've both trashed him before on this podcast. But that doesn't mean... well, first of all, I still believe in the timeline. And so I don't think you can really fairly judge this firing as it happens today without taking into account so much of McDonough's legacy rests on the fate of Josh Jackson, DeAndre Ayton, and Mikal Bridges. And if in one thing that's really going to enrage me is if in 2022 the Suns are a finals contender on the backs of Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton as these two superstars, and maybe one of Josh Jackson or Mikal Bridges is the third fiddle to those two, then if Robert Sarver or James Jones or anyone else who's serving as the GM then is trying to take credit for it, really in that case, McDonough would have sort of redeemed himself because the timeline worked. And so all of the ire that he's getting of these Suns fans right now wouldn't have been worth it whatsoever. And he really has the potential still, I'd say, almost to become like this Sam Hinkie figure in Phoenix if the timeline pans out. That being said, I don't think the question here was Ryan McDonough a great GM? I think the vast majority of us Suns fans recognize he wasn't a great GM. He was maybe at best an okay GM. It's more I'm worried about what the next move is, and I'm worried about Robert Sarver having control over who the next general manager of this franchise is, because I don't have the faith in Robert Sarver to find a general manager that's necessarily better than Ryan McDonough as the next step, as the team tries to flip the script, as Robert Sarver kept saying to Burns and Gambo on the radio today. It's not that Ryan was so great, it's that I am just pessimistic enough to not really have any faith that the next general manager is going to be better. I think Suns fans are understating it, not really realizing how much worse it can get for us before it does get better.
Here's a couple points I want to make. Actually, let's start with Robert Sarver. Now, what I want to know is, Robert Sarver, first of all, he's kind of looked at as maybe the worst to close to the worst owner in all of the NBA. Now, I don't necessarily disagree with that, but I don't necessarily agree with it either. And I think the question that I'm wondering, the question that I'm sort of posing is, can owners get better? Is it possible for an owner to start out really badly and then improve? Because if you do believe that's possible, let's go over the sort of what Robert Sarver's ownership of the team has been like. He came in the best situation possible as far as owning a team goes. He had two stars, Steve Nash and Amari Stoudemire. He sort of sold some draft picks. He did a pretty bad job of building the team and then sort of lucked out when Steve Kerr put together that Western Conference Finals team, which was a little bit of an accident for Steve Kerr, as we know as well. It was, we covered that in the past, and that led to a Western Conference Finals appearance. So that, a lot of people don't give Robert Sarver credit for that, and that's fair, but he kind of deserves a little bit of credit for that as well. It happened under his tenure. And then a few years of mediocrity. There were teams that were attempting to be good over time, and this is his legacy at this point. His legacy is a guy who's trying to be good and has only succeeded in being mediocre. But how long did that really happen under Robert Sarver? 2 or 3 years, maybe 4 years at the most, really. You can kind of say once Amari Stoudemire left, so the 10-11 season and beyond for the next few years. And then the rebuild began in earnest 14-15-ish. I think I can't remember exactly the season that we decided it fully began when we did our McDonough conversation.
15-16 was the start of the tank officially.
So let's say 4 years of mediocrity. And in those 4 years of mediocrity, there was an accidental 48-win team. So that was a good team. And admittedly, that was when the rebuild was supposed to start. So what we can really say is he started out with a good team. He took that good team to the Western Conference Finals. And then there was 4 years of mediocrity where he made a lot of really terrible decisions. That was followed up with a general manager. Ryan McDonough's biggest accomplishment was convincing Robert Sarver to tank. This was something that Suns fans were begging for at the time. They were tired of watching the owner sell off picks and try and sign Josh Childress and Vince Carter and Marcin Gortat, whoever you want to point at that time. That only led to us winning 35 to 40 games at the most, and that was in the best possible situation. It got worse. It got much, much worse. So that followed with an owner actually deciding to fully embrace the tank for a few years. Now, that is a good decision for an owner to make, fully embracing the tank. Now, there were missteps in the tank, but there are always missteps in the tank. There has never been a tank that fully went perfectly other than maybe the Tim Duncan tank, the famous San Antonio, sit David Robinson, and then draft Tim Duncan, and then just put the team back together. That's sort of the semi-tank, if you will. It's just a one-season tank. This was a full rebuild from the ground up, and there's always missteps, and those missteps did happen under Ryan McDonough and Robert Sarver, but that also happened under Sam Hinkie. He drafted some duds, We know Nerlens Noel, we know MCW, we know all the players, Okafor, for example, that they drafted, but they also got Embiid and Simmons, and maybe Markelle Fultz will be a dud as well, but maybe he'll be a star. So the question is this a terrible, terrible decision from a owner that's going back to his old ways, which was just 4 years of mediocrity? Or is this an owner saying, okay, it's easy to be bad. It's easy for a general manager to be bad. I need a general manager that knows how to be good now. And a lot of that will depend on where we go from here, because what we can see is, will he just elevate James Jones to a role he's never been in, and that seems like an old school Robert Sarver? Or is he going to bring in guys like David Griffin that maybe he didn't really work super well with in the past, but that does not matter because he's really trying to win? Or maybe even Sam Hinkie. Now, I don't see that happening because, as I said on Twitter, I believe that Sam Hinkie is shadow banned by Adam Silver and not allowed to work in the NBA as a general manager anymore. But what matters now is what happens next, because what happens next will determine is if it's possible for an owner to get better, or if they just are what they are because they're rich guys and nobody really tells them no. I'm sorry, I ranted a little bit there, but what do you think about all that, Sam?
Yeah, Ryan, this firing comes with a lot of feelings, so obviously the both of us are going to rant. I just want to address these two names that keep popping up that I've been seeing all day, James Jones and David Griffin, as the two most likely suspects, even though a formal general manager search hasn't started yet. I don't like either of those names. And it's not really that I don't like either of those names, it's that I don't believe we have enough information to sort of give them the hype that I believe Suns fans are currently giving them right now. If you look at David Griffin's brief 4-year stint in Cleveland, I believe that you could have taken any number of GMs around the NBA, put them into that stellar of a situation. They would have gotten the same results that David Griffin did. And I think for a lot of people, it's very easy to look at Ryan McDonough's stint in Phoenix, see that we consistently finished with one of the worst records in the NBA, and then look at David Griffin and see that the Cavs were good, and sort of conclude on a surface level that means that Griffin good, McDonough bad. But if you delve a little bit deeper into that, I don't think there's much of a difference between those two general managers. David Griffin lucked out in the sense that LeBron James wanted to return to Cleveland in 2014 to redeem his legacy. He lucked out in the sense that the Cavs got 2 straight back-to-back number 1 overall picks that they didn't deserve, which he then flipped for Kevin Love, which I think any general manager could have done if they were given those picks. So, beyond getting lucky on those 2 levels, Kyrie Irving was already with the team as well. Really, all David Griffin did was he made a couple coaching hires like David Blatt and Tyronn Lue, and these minor trades like J.R. Smith, Iman Shumpert, and Timofey Mozgov. I don't think that he's the magic Band-Aid to stop the bleeding for the Phoenix Suns that Suns fans seem to be sort of giving him this reputation of right now. And I would like to stop the hype train there a little bit. And then when it comes to James Jones, it's exactly the Earl Watson situation again. And I'm not saying that James Jones is completely incapable of evaluating talent at a high level, but you don't want to get out of this laughingstock situation where everyone was talking about Earl Watson was not ready to be an NBA head coach, and then do the same exact thing where you take a guy 1 year removed from retiring from the league and thrust him into a position he's not ready for. So yeah, just what Sarver was saying on the radio today, really propping up James Jones a little bit too much for my taste. I'd like to believe that they're going to go out and get someone with some good experience, but I don't know. I'm feeling pretty pessimistic about the upcoming search right now, at least until we receive more information.
I have to ask you then, what general manager is there out there that you'd be comfortable with? Because here's the problem with a general manager search, is that the good ones never leave their jobs. They stay in their jobs for a really long time. So what you end up doing is you look for the guys that maybe are fired a little unfairly, like David Griffin, because he did. Although I think you're right, there were some lucky breaks. I think a lot of general managers that are really good get a few lucky breaks along the way. But he did shepherd a good team into the finals. So he was fired after that, and that means that he's a general manager that has experience taking a team to the finals that's available at this point, which is a rare thing that just doesn't really happen that often. So the other option is you start looking at young guys from teams that have really creative and innovative general managers. Guys like, say, Ryan McDonough.
Exactly. Well, I was about to say that. Here's the sort of fault in my thinking, right? Is it's going to sound ridiculous, but I think the Suns should hire another general manager in the mold of a Ryan McDonough. And that's, I guess, sort of indicative of my thought process here being that Ryan McDonough wasn't a complete failure. I never questioned when he made any sort of draft, any sort of trade, the logic behind it. I always believed that Ryan McDonough, as poor as his people managing skills were, that he was going into each of his basketball decisions sort of analyzing it from every angle. I believe that he believed in the power of the eye test, but he also believed heavily in analytics and statistics, as you need to do these days, which is not always the case for these former players who are turned into executives, by the way. So, and it's not necessarily anything against David Griffin either. I don't think David Griffin would be a bad hire by any means. I think replacing Ryan McDonough with David Griffin is more of a lateral move than Suns fans are recognizing right now. It's easy to get caught up in the hype of the Cavs being carried to the finals several years in a row by LeBron James. I'm not ready to attribute all of that success to David Griffin specifically and then pretend that would translate should he come to Phoenix.
So the other name that Woj reported was Kevin McHale. Now, Kevin McHale supposedly lives in Phoenix or in Arizona, at least close to Phoenix, and maybe has a previous relationship with some of the people with, I guess, Robert Sarver is the main. It's the only person you have to impress at this point. I guess James Jones might have a say in it. It seems like Robert Sarver, like you said, was pumping up James Jones to prepare us for the potential James Jones future general manager job. But Kevin McHale was thrown out there, and that's very bizarre to me. One, Kevin McHale has never been a general manager, but he
handled the Timberwolves.
Oh, yes, that's correct. He did handle the Timberwolves in the past. Okay, I should say Kevin McHale's most recent stint was as a coach, yes. a head coach. That's a better way to put it. Now, I do think that Kevin McHale was actually a better coach than a lot of people realize and actually was a little unfairly maligned as the coach of the Houston Rockets, and he did a pretty good job. There were also problems with him not getting along with some of his players, which is something that sort of is the reason that he was fired from that job. And that's just something when you think about getting rid of McDonough, because I do agree with you. I think McDonough was a very smart guy who knew a lot about basketball, but did not know a lot about people and managing, or struggled with that. I can't really make a judgment without ever having met the guy. But the idea of us bringing in a guy like Kevin McHale, who has had problems with personality management in the past, is a little bit insane. But it does kind of feel like, Robert Sarver looking at saying, Danny Ainge, oh, that guy was on that Celtics team and he's such a great general manager. What about Kevin McHale? He was on that team too. Doesn't that just feel like a Robert Sarver type move to you?
Yeah, it does a little bit. What we have to consider with McHale is his claim to fame as a general manager is trading Kevin Garnett from the Timberwolves to the Celtics for trash.
Mm-hmm.
For Al Jefferson and a couple of first-round picks. Trying to think who else was involved in that deal. Gerald Green, Ryan Gomes, I think, guys like that. Not great. And actually, okay, so I just pulled it up. The 2 first-round picks that they got ended up turning into Wayne Ellington and Johnny Flynn.
Woof.
God, it's so funny how the Timberwolves selected Rubio and Flynn, both ahead of Steph Curry.
It should be said that could have been Wayne Ellington and Steph Curry, and that trade would be viewed a lot differently. And
true.
And it should be said, too, Kevin McHale did not make that pick. That was David Kahn.
That's also true.
So Who knows what it would have been if Kevin McHale stayed there. But even regardless of all of that, that trade is still, in its current form, not a great trade.
Yeah, so I don't know. Overall, I don't feel too negative about Kevin McHale, but I do kind of get the sense that I want some fresh blood in there to try to see if you can poach someone. I mean, look, Robert Sarver is not a great guy by all accounts to work for, but this is one of 30 openings if you want to be an NBA general manager, and it's got a great young core. I think that's pretty much undeniable at this point. So you'd hope that you can still have some interviews with these guys. And for Suns fans out there who think I'm making it sound like I really just want another Ryan McDonough clone, maybe it is being a little optimistic, but I'd like to think you can get a guy with the smarts of Ryan McDonough, because I really do think he is a savvy basketball mind, but someone who's better with the interpersonal side of things and can sort, because that was Ryan McDonough's biggest weakness that we always criticized. If you can find someone who can sort of manage those two things and manage not to just be a mouthpiece for Robert Sarver, then that would be the ideal situation. I just don't know if we're going to luck into a situation like that.
Correct. And in a weird way, that might actually be James Jones. It's just that we're so scarred from previous decisions like Terry Porter or Watson it's just a little scary to think about them promoting from within without making a genuine effort to try and find the best option. Now, we don't know what's going to happen here, but I do want to go back to a previous point I was making about Robert Sarver because, and forgive me for being the guy that's actually defending Robert Sarver right now, but I'm not actually trying to do that because I do think it could go either way at this point. It could be that he's a complete disaster, and maybe who knows why we're even being Suns fans anymore. But it also could be that he's actually genuinely trying to improve the team because Ryan McDonough has made a lot of mistakes in the past, and he doesn't want a guy who's made that kind of mistakes to be the guy that's shepherding this team into the future of potentially winning when you have really important pieces like Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton on the team. I don't want to judge too much yet because it's really difficult to know what's going on right now, and I do think it's possible for owners to get better, and I wonder why he hasn't gotten the credit for actually committing to tanking by a lot of national media. I think that takes a lot for an owner to do, and very few owners have actually ever done it. They Philadelphia ownership group gets a lot of credit from national media for actually committing to tanking for years and years and years to actually build as big of a core as good of a core as they've built over time. Whereas the Suns, maybe not, we haven't tanked as long, but we did put a lot of time into tanking to try and build a core. So my question to you is, how do you feel about Robert Sarver going forward? Do you think that this is just a complete disaster and we should give up like a lot of Suns fans are kind of talking online right now? Or do you think it's too early to judge?
Yeah, well, I'm not going to go out and purchase a billboard that tells them to sell the team. I'm not at that point yet. I could get there. I'll be honest, I could get there, but I'm not there yet. I think more it's just my main worry about Robert Sarver is always that there are owners where you get the sense that they really love the sport of basketball. You know, you watch Mark Cuban on TV all the time watching the Dallas Mavericks, and you can really tell he's a fan. He wants to put the best basketball product out there as possible for the sake of that being a successful organization, not just the profit. I'm not saying that Robert Sarver doesn't like basketball at all. I'm not saying he hates basketballs and goes around to public parks popping basketballs in his spare time. But I get the impression sometimes that, you know, we could be headed for another era of Phoenix Suns basketball where he's just trying to make the team economically viable, sort of bring the fan base back to the point where they're making money, winning 45 games. Fans are going to turn out for that, but ultimately you're never going to get anywhere. And for the diehards who really follow this team, who really have believed in the concept of the timeline over the past couple of years, to make some short-minded, irrational, maybe kind of emotional decisions right now where you sell off prospects for okay veterans that are only going to take you so far, I think that would hurt a lot.
So to wrap up this conversation a little bit, I want to talk about the three guys here. The three guys that I think have the highest likelihood of being the general manager of this team. First of all, I want to say that I don't believe that David Griffin's actually in the race. I think that's coming from Suns fans. Although I think it was, I forget who it was. There was a reporter on Twitter who did mention that David Griffin could get a look at the job. I just don't think that's likely. I think a lot of guys who work with Robert Sarver just don't end up working with him again. Although Igor did come back, so who knows? So let's say David Griffin, let's say James Jones, and let's say Kevin McHale. And I want to say, who do you feel the most comfortable with of those three guys? And let's start with you, Sam. Which one of those three guys do you feel the most comfortable with? And maybe which one of them do you feel the least comfortable with?
Most comfortable would be Griffin. Again, not that I think he's a bad GM whatsoever. I think he has a lot of potential. Everything I've read from him makes him seem like a smart guy. It's just I don't have so much faith in him that I'd be ready to call us a contender immediately. And then the least faith, again, just sort of on the opposite side of the spectrum, James Jones, not because I've seen anything verifiable that says that he would be a terrible general manager, but he quite simply doesn't have that experience. We just don't know.
Yeah, I think those are fair assessments, but I actually I'd put David Griffin at the top still. Now, it's just such a close race, though, because I don't feel that comfortable with him either, but I think that he's the most proven. And as far as being the most proven, that's the easiest bet. The thing is I don't think that the most proven guy is always the best hire. I think that sometimes you have to think a little outside of the box, and that's kind of what Phoenix has been known for as far as being good in the past. So I want to be that team that is capable of doing that. And maybe that's James Jones. But the one thing I know for sure is it's not Kevin McHale. I don't think that Kevin McHale is the guy. Now, who knows? Maybe Kevin McHale ends up being the guy because Woj is rarely wrong about this kind of thing. So if we had to make a bet on someone, maybe that's the safest bet at this point. It's just I don't buy into him being the guy that can shepherd this team in the future. Maybe he could teach DeAndre Ayton some post moves, though.
Yeah, maybe he can. But let me ask you something, Mike. When we graded every significant move of Ryan McDonough's tenure, what grade did you give the Earl Watson hiring?
F.
I believe you laughed when we even got to it. Like, the idea of Earl Watson was such a joke. What is your rationale for hiring James Jones? Explain to me how that is not the definition of insanity to do that 1 year removed from the Earl Watson fiasco. Regardless of James Jones's actual basketball ability, he could be the greatest scout in the universe. But just explain that logic to me.
It is the fact that he has been to the finals so many times. And that's it. And I realize that is a very on the surface level observation that may not matter at all, but it seems like everyone who has been around James, do you remember the Kevin Love Instagram post about James Jones when they stopped being teammates? Do you remember all the things that Kevin Love said about James Jones? And the way that LeBron James talked about James Jones in the past and the fact that he's been there so many times, he kind of knows what it takes to get there. I know, very on the surface level observations, but it's not, it's hard for us to make these decisions, right? What we're doing is we're consuming everything on TV, we're consuming everything on Twitter, we're consuming everything on Reddit, and then we're making observations based on that. So that's all I got to go on. I don't know what James Jones is like to talk to in person and what kind of decisions he makes around basketball, but I do know that LeBron does and Kevin Love does, and they seem to really, really, really respect him. So I don't know. It's just, I don't think it's that insane of an idea, but I also think it's completely insane because it just depends on the process, right? I do think if we go through interviewing a lot of interesting guys from other teams and then we end up with James Jones, I'd feel a little more comfortable with it. If all of a sudden, 2 weeks from now, after he makes some terrible trade for a point guard, James Jones is just immediately elevated to that position, then that makes me feel a little different about it. It's just that I don't think that I think James Jones is really smart, and I don't think he's the same as Earl Watson. I guess is more than anything else. I think it's a different kind of guy. I
certainly hope so. I can't wait for the Josh Jackson for Patrick Beverley trade notification that we might see in a week.
Wow. I think the most likely thing is that we end up with James Jones general manager, and maybe I'm just trying to talk myself into it.
Yeah. I got nothing to go on. I got as much to go on as you do. I have no idea what's going on. But maybe we should bring on someone who maybe kind of does know what's going on.
That's a great idea. Let's take a quick break. And coming up, we have the brand new Suns reporter for AZCentral. We've all been waiting to find out who he is. We get to hear from him in person. We get to see what he's like, talk about his past a little. It is Duane Rankin from AZCentral. That's coming up next. And you know what, Sam? We're recording this before the Warriors game. Let's watch the Suns versus Warriors, and maybe that'll cheer us up, right?
Yeah, until Tyler Ulis finishes with a plus 30, 16 points, 10 assists.
Joining us from AZCentral, the brand new reporter for the Phoenix Suns, Duane Rankin. Duane, thank you so much for joining us on the timeline. We're really happy for you to be here.
No problem. No problem at all. I'm sitting there watching the end of the Knicks and Wizards. Knicks are still the Knicks, so so waiting on Warriors Suns. So yeah, no problem. No problem. Happy to be on.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Now, a couple questions just first right off the bat. You joined the AZCentral crew to cover the Phoenix Suns in a really interesting time for the franchise. First off, the number 1 overall pick. Apparently, we're done tanking now. That's what Robert Sarver said on the radio. The team's going to look to win. They've added a whole bunch of new players. And then all of a sudden, today, Robert Sarver fires general manager Ryan McDonough. What is it like to join the crew covering the team in this time for the franchise? What's it been like for you?
I mean, I've been doing this for a long time. So, I mean, it's definitely odd. I'm not gonna sit up here and act like it's not odd, but I mean, when the franchise, you have the worst record last year, and then you've only won like 68 games over the last 3 years, and then they couldn't acquire the type of point guard that they wanted. Let's make that correction. They couldn't acquire the point guards that they wanted. So once you see that, and you see how the team's playing, um, I'm surprised by it, but it just felt like something was bound to happen because of what was going on. As good as Aiden has looked, it was glaring that a point guard was needed, and so by not getting one, and then that being obviously a major issue for the team in terms of the idea that they're going to take this next step, and this is what's needed, and then it hasn't been brought in, and you see all these names. I don't think that was I don't think that's what got him fired, but I think that may have been the straw that broke the camel's back. And so when you add all that up and do a hindsight 2020, I'm not surprised. So, but to answer your initial question, it's not odd. I mean, I've covered teams where, coaches got fired. Those teams, players left, trades. So I've seen this before. Not before, but right before the start of the season. That's a little bit odd. But again, anything is fair game now. So I'm at the end of the day surprised initially, but after I've thought about it, not overly shocked. Surprised, but not shocked.
It seems like the biggest reaction that we've been seeing is the same. Not surprised that he was fired, but surprised more by the timing of it. Like you said, you've been doing this a long time. Do you find that to be the most odd part of it, just the timing in general, being that it's in the middle of preseason, the season starts in 8 days?
Like you say, I mean, the timing is odd. It just you wondering why. But just listening to Sarver, and I listened to the same interview you guys did and everybody else did, he kept saying the next step. So I'm just wondering what the next step is. He said, we did this to facilitate the next step. The next step isn't supposed to be the GM hire, because he said he's going to take his time making that hire. He said it wasn't going to be in a rush to make that hire. So if you're believing that, what is the next step? And then that, so is that making a move to get a point guard? Really shaking up the roster? I mean, what exactly is the next step? He didn't really address the point guard situation. He just said, I don't want to get into specifics, and we have this number of point guards and we're doing this, but he kept saying the next step. So obviously, whatever that is, he didn't feel as if McDonough was the guy to make that next step. And that could be a number of things, but the timing is definitely odd. But I do find it interesting that when you look at McDonough, and he was talking about, on the media day about, they were going to, they still were exploring the options of making trades. And so you saw that, and that was 2 weeks ago. So if in that 2 week time, nothing happened. So it was almost like, well, you said that this was still on the table, but then no move was made in terms of, of making that happen. Now they tried, obviously, but didn't get the result, didn't get any results out of it. So I look at that 2 weeks and I'm going, maybe that was more pivotal than what initially we thought, because McDonough was talking about trade deadline, all the way up to the trade deadline, he was thinking. And I had to think, you had to think 2 weeks ago, he wasn't thinking 2 weeks later he was going to get fired. I'm sure he was thinking, okay, I got time to make this happen. And then 2 weeks later to be let go. That's odd. To me. Maybe to nobody else, but to me, that's odd.
No, it's definitely odd. And listening to that interview with Robert Sarver today, you heard him talk about he thinks that the team hit sort of a plateau and that he wants to
Right.
flip the script and really start winning. Do you buy into that? Because, while the team has made some moves this offseason, and you could certainly say they got better, is it a reasonable expectation, in your opinion, for Sarver to want this team to be winning now, or are they really still too young for that?
Well, it's almost like, I hate to keep harping on this point guard thing, but that's where we are with this team. I think when he's saying the whole idea to flip something, I think part of that is going out and really trying to get a major, player, somebody that's going to come in and you're like, oh wow, the wow factor. Ariza is a great pickup, but he's not the wow factor. The trade that they made. Knight obviously had injury issues, so okay, you don't have that to deal with, but what they got in return, was there a wow in that? I mean, no. I mean, Ryan Anderson's a nice piece. Melton, it's a rookie. You don't know what he could or couldn't be, but there's no wow in it. The wow was in the draft, getting Ayton. But there's been no wow as far as outside of the draft. So you're sitting there and you're talking about flipping something. That's why I keep going back to the next step. Is the next step flipping something to make something big happen? But what team would be willing to do that? And if you really listen to his interview, he was saying stuff like, well, it's on the other end. We can have what we have and what we can offer. But then the other team has to be willing to accept that. And then you got to look at what they have and see if both sides can work something out. He said it's not on us, it's on them as far as the trade. So you're wondering what dealings were being made and what Phoenix really offered and what they, because we know what they're asking for, but we don't know what they exactly were offering. So what did they put out there?
Yeah.
To make another team go, okay, that's worth it, or say, nah, thanks, but no thanks.
Right, and even to go beyond that, what was Ryan McDonough willing to put out there, and then what was Robert Sarver willing to put out there? Because I think that might be where there's a little different, maybe a misunderstanding between the two of them. Now, of course, Robert Sarver can't fire the general manager of another team, so he took it out on the general manager of the team that he owns. Now, you came from most recently.
That was funny though.
Thank you. Now, it seems
Go ahead.
Most recently, you came from the Montgomery Advertiser, so you were writing in Alabama. That means that you have a bit of an outsider's perspective of the team. A lot of the ire of Suns fans is pointed directly at Robert Sarver right now. He's been an owner that has done a lot that Suns fans have disagreed with in his entire tenure. Now, as someone who came from an outsider perspective, what has been your perception of Robert Sarver from the past, and what has it been maybe since you started covering the team a little more closely?
Well, before I even address that, I've been I covered major college football, but I always kept an eye on the NBA because it's the NBA. So you always keep an eye on what's going on with when they make moves. Who has what. The ticker. I constantly paid attention to the league, which is part of the reason I took the job because I always kept an eye on the league. But as far as the initial, when you go back to the number of coaches that have come through there since D'Antoni, and then you're looking at that and you're going, okay, well, all right, that doesn't seem normal. Then when you fire a coach 3 games into a season because Sarver put it out there to basically say, hey, look, when it comes to the decisions, I own those. I'm responsible. Ultimately, I'm the one that's responsible. So that would mean in terms of putting McDonough in the position of power to make the decisions, and then him actually making decisions. So when you see Watson when he got fired, then you see how that's worked in terms of who has been drafted. With Bender and some of the drafts obviously have worked. You drafted Booker. You obviously this Aiden looks like that could really work if he continues to develop. But you looking back at some of the others and you're going, well, that hasn't panned out. So when you look at his history in that sense, it's hit or miss. Now that's some of that's the nature of the business. You're not going to hit 1,000. Not going to hit that because if they hit 1,000, they're the Golden State Warriors. So you're not going to hit 1,000. So but you want to hit better than what they've been hitting. And so you're weighing all that, and so clearly, I thought today in the interview he took ownership, which I think he should, because he is the owner. And it just doesn't look good. And I think that's part of at the end of that when you heard the questions about perception. It doesn't look good from Eric Bledsoe. That just brought all that back. This whole thing is like, okay, here's another example of why Phoenix is in this situation. And then you go and look at, who they not haven't been able to bring in and which is why he was talking about the draft, saying we control that part. We control the draft. We can't control the free agency, but we control the draft. So which is why he was harping on that today. So, but his history, it doesn't look good, but when you're rich, you're an owner. Ain't nobody above him. So if he want to do what he do, then you got to roll with that. So I don't know if it really matters in terms of. I mean, the Suns fans. I know I sense the frustration today. It came out like full. Like you got the games and you're seeing them struggle, but you're saying it's preseason and you're saying there's no Booker. You're like, well, you're not seeing the full squad yet. But then when this happens, then you sense here we go again. And you see it, you hear it. And so I think they have reason to go, here we go again.
Well, I think one of the things that Suns fans really fear the most is, again, talking about this outsider perspective, just like thinking that this team has a toxic culture that just doesn't work from the top, bottom, this toxic culture. From what you've seen so far, being in the locker room, being at training camp, just talking to, obviously the team has a new coach, new coaching staff, and talking to players as well. Does it seem like a healthy environment, like the type of environment that you can actually build a winning culture out of? Because I think for a lot of Suns fans, that's the biggest worry right now is how do you take what's happened over the past several seasons and really start to turn it around?
It's interesting that you ask that question. The guys seem to get along great. I mean, just seeing them and interacting, there's the vibe, good vibe is there, a good energy is there. I think the coach can be brutally honest, and I think that it seems to be working in terms of what how the players are responding to what they're being coached to do. He's pointed out certain guys and said that, like Bender, he said Bender needs to be tougher. Jackson, he said, you gotta understand if I'm gonna put you in a playmaker role, you gotta make better decisions with the ball, cause, Jackson has 16 turnovers in 3 games. So he's like, you're playing well, but you gotta be smarter or better when you're making decisions with the ball. So, and you're not hearing, because you can do an interview and you can sense the player is like, yeah, he said that about me, so I got it. I'm not getting that sense from guys. They seem, like I said, seem to be getting along fine. Now, this right here could put guys on edge. Wondering what's going to happen next. When you fire the GM, the players are like, well, you're going to fire him, then where do I stand? And obviously that's not with all of them. I mean, Booker's safe, Aiden's safe, but I'm sure certain guys are like, hey, yo, what's this all about? So, and the whole team is probably feeling the same way, and probably the coach and the staff. And so this is a big shakeup. So I'd be curious to see how they respond to this, because you can be in that foxhole and, we're in the bunker, we're all in the bunker together. But when something like this happens, it really shows you where that anything can happen. And so I'd be curious to see how the players respond to this. But, from what I've seen, like in camp, they, like I said, seem to be getting along. Personalities seem to mesh. Ariza seems to be a good influence. He's taken on a leadership role. You can tell they follow his lead. You can see that in a lot of ways. Aiden seems to be fitting in well, taking, from Tyson, and really accepting that whole idea. I got to learn from these guys. These guys have been here and done that. I haven't. And when someone of that talent is accepting that type of leadership or mentoring, that's huge. So, and they're young. So, a lot of, so that's working. Well, okay, we're in this, we're young gunners. We're going to try to make this happen. So you got all that going. So I don't see an issue in terms of getting along, with each other. I don't see one guy that's like, I don't want to be here, or I'm going to be a disruption. I don't see that. I don't see that. I'm not around him 24/7, but from what I've seen, I don't see that.
Now, you brought up Ayton a couple of times. First, you said that he seems to be a guy that can really succeed as long as he keeps working at it. And you brought up his willingness to be coached and his personality and his willingness to try to be a leader. What were your impressions of Ayton maybe before you got to the team, and how has he performed in your eyes? Has he exceeded those? Has he met those? Maybe even, I can't imagine that you would think that he's not meeting your expectations unless you had very high expectations for him already. Because he's been really good in the preseason so far. He's even better than college, I would say, as far as using the space that being in the NBA provides. But what is your impression of him so far?
Well, before, I watched a few games when he was at Arizona. I mean, how could you not? I mean, he was, you're looking at him and going like, this dude here is the, best player in the country. And you're going, I watched Bagley, of course, and, being in Alabama, I watched Colin Sexton, and watched some of the Kentucky guys that came through and ended up getting obviously drafted on the point guard and saw those guys. So clearly, talent, special talent. You can see that obviously in college. And, I saw the first time he played, I said, well, he's not going to be here. This is it. Why would he stay? I think I don't even know why, he might well declare now. This was back in November. I said, I don't know why he's even messing around with this whole waiting, deal. But what I've seen so far, I knew that he could be, in terms of getting, inside, and I think they should be using him more in the post, but they haven't been using him as much in the post as I thought. But it's a different game. So, him on the outside, at the high post, it works. It works. But what has impressed me, he obviously can score. He's got the athleticism to be able to block shots. And protect the paint. He needs to obviously get better at that. I think what's interesting that sometimes he's out on the perimeter and guys drive on him. That's the next step for him. Because on pick and roll, I was surprised on the pick and roll, on the switch on the pick and roll. The guy has quick feet. I mean, it's like he's on toes. He's not on heels. He's on toes bouncing around. I'm like, this dude's 7'1" and bouncing around like he's 6'5". I'm like, I was just, but it was funny. Booker was saying that's what we got to have out of him. This was before he even played the preseason game. He was saying, you're going to have to switch out on guys like Steph Curry. He's naming Harden. He's naming all these dudes. And he's like, that's going to be part of his job as far as on the defensive end. But so I've been surprised by that, even though Aiden said that that's what he did at Arizona. I guess I wasn't paying much attention to that. I was just seeing him dunking and wasn't really seeing that. But that's been a surprise. And then them running the offense through him. Coach Igor said he's our Steve Nash right now. That's awesome with Booker out. But just think about that statement. He's our Steve Nash right now.
Yeah.
So you're saying this dude 7'1", and he's your playmaker right now? Like, that's just saying a lot about what he thinks Ayton is. But just to see him making decisions, passing, making the right pass, and obviously his dives to the rim, that should be, there should be at least a couple of those highlights in the game. But lastly, I think he showed in the last game, even though Portland won soundly, getting on the offensive glass against guys that aren't as quick as him, because the defenders he had in that game weren't as quick as him. So he was able to get around them for tip-ins and putbacks. And I think him figuring out early, like it's almost like, once he goes, how you go through a stretch of things once, and then, okay, you recognize, all right, that's there. It's like going through a maze. That's there. Or like when you're driving, I've been using GPS to get all over the place. But now, there's certain times I don't have to use a GPS to get to the arena now. I know, okay, take this exit, take that exit. I think that's what you're going to see with him. He's going to go through some growing pains that he's not recognizing right away. All the film he can look at, nothing like being in a live situation. So once he goes through that and figures out who's guarding him, how they function, what they are, what type of players they are, I think he's going to even be better in the second half of the season, because he's going to go through these experiences. He's going to learn from those. So I think what you're seeing now, if he continues to develop, and it looks scary now, because I know, but it is preseason. But once he gets to the second half of the season and gets to learn how to play with the other guys, and learn how to play with Booker, I think he's going to be even better second half of the season. I think that's when you're going to see, when you're wondering, is this the guy for the next 10 or 12 years? That's when you'll start to see if that's going to be it in the second half of the season.
Duane, before we let you go, I do want to give you a chance to talk about yourself a little bit and introduce yourself to Suns fans. Just maybe talk about your experience in sports journalism. I know you've been doing it for decades, and how it led you here to Phoenix in the first place. And also, are the Suns a team that you've been interested in historically as you followed the NBA?
Well, wow, decades. And don't put too many decades. I don't have no gray now. Come on. I'm not gray.
Couple decades.
I'm not gray. I'm not gray yet. It was probably coming. After covering this team, I probably will be gray. But no, I was just kidding. But no, actually, I don't want to bore people with anything. So I'm not going to go all the way back when I first started or anything like that. But my first real taste of NBA was I used to work in Erie, Pennsylvania, and I used to cover some Cavs games when LeBron's first run. And matter of fact, I covered the finals when they played San Antonio, and we should just have go to early games early in the season, around the All-Star break, before and after, and then towards the end of the season. So saw out of the 41 home games, probably saw little under half of those in the regular season. In the playoffs, follow them strictly. And I was in Detroit, and they scored the last 25 points. So I was there for that feat. When you saw, okay, well, I guess this dude is the real deal. I guess the Jordan stuff. I guess we can start that now. with him. But, I saw that, and obviously saw Cleveland trying to get to the finals with that first run there, and was following them all the way up to the decision. And then even after that, that next year after that. And then so during that time, saw Steve Nash when Phoenix came to town. Saw Orlando, Dwight Howard, the big three in Boston, Kobe when the Lakers came, and everyone thought the Lakers and the Cavs were going to meet in the finals before Orlando beat them and beat them in the playoffs. So I saw a lot of the Houston teams with Brady. So I saw a few of those squads over the years, because we only went to the when they played, significant games. I wasn't going to go see them, play the Knicks. No offense, but I wasn't going to go see them play the Knicks. I'm not trying to beat up on the Knicks. It just feels that way. But I did that. Right, it is too easy. I did that for a number of years, and then I left and started doing major college football. But obviously, like I said, kept my eye on the NBA. Now looking at the Suns in particular, I mean, if you're a fan of the game, you saw Nash and Amari making it happen. With Sean Marion and all those boys. I mean, that was a very fun offense to watch. D'Antoni and I went to the same college. He went before I did. He went to Marshall way before I. You're talking about decades. Now that's decades. Yeah. He went way before I did. But we went to the same school, and so I always followed him because we went to the same school. And so I kept an eye on Phoenix just to see how he was doing and how he would do it. Watched a lot of games because it's like, hey, he's from the same school I went to. But obviously before that, you gotta know Barkley and Dan Marley and Kevin Johnson and Mark West. I see Mark West walking around at the arena. I said, that's Mark West. It's like, I was just tripping off of it. He came walk past and I was like, that is Mark West, right? And they was like, yeah, that's Mark West. I was like, okay. So, to Tom Chambers and, so obviously that team. And then, remember Richard Dumas. I even remember him when he was, played on the team that made it to the finals. And, so remember that stretch. Then obviously remember the D'Antoni stretch. But then you obviously saw what happened with, Eric Bledsoe and all that. And you're like, man, what? And so I was thinking at the time, what's going on with Phoenix? Because they had always been a playoff team. And then to, just to go from being in the Western Conference Finals against the Lakers to slowly evaporating. And you're just like, what happened? So and then of course the Watson thing was like, whoa, but obviously paired with the Bledsoe. And so, but within the irony is, as I saw Booker when he was in college, Kentucky, obviously SEC. So I saw him play in the tournament, and it was funny because it was a guy, a diehard UK fan, and we were talking, and because Kentucky fans, y'all probably have never been to the SEC tournament. I don't know if you have or not. I shouldn't say that, but if you haven't, Kentucky fans buy all the tickets. So once other teams start getting bounced, then they start buying up more tickets. And then by the time they get to the championship game, it looks like Rupp Arena. It's insane. So, but I saw Booker in college. Obviously played with Cat and Big Cat and those guys. And me and this Kentucky fan, he was talking about, I said, who you think the best player is on the team? I think he mentioned Tyler Ewing, which was legit, which was a legit answer because Ewing was a leader on the team, older guy. And I said, I think it's Devin Booker. They're like, why? I said, because he can score. I said, this is the league. I said, the league is scoring. I said, now here, Calipari's spreading all these minutes out. He's got all these dudes, and he's just, whatever. I said, but once they get to the league, you're going to see Booker be the guy because he can score. Well, he only averaging 10 points a game. I said, that's because he's here. I said, put him on LSU, he's averaging 30. I said, so it's all based on who he's playing for. So I've seen him, and I saw Bridges last year when Villanova played Alabama in the tournament, and he went bonkers in the second half with threes. And so the irony of it is I've seen some of these guys already play. Like in
Duane,
person.
if you keep making calls like that, maybe you should forward your resume to Robert Starver for this GM.
No,
opening.
Yeah.
Robert don't need me, and I don't need to be on Robert's staff. Then Robert lets guys go. I mean, I don't know if I'd be safe. No, I'm just kidding. But no, I can't. No way. But I'm just saying, I saw those guys play, and so the irony of when the opportunity came to me, and I started doing research on the team before I accepted the job, because I wanted to make sure, okay, if I'm going to take this, I need to know what I'm looking at. If it's just because I'm already traveling 26 hours cross country to get here, so I'm like, if I'm going to do that, then I need to know what I'm looking at. And obviously was familiar with Ariza, knew about Chandler, saw Anderson. Obviously, I knew he was a shooter. Some of the names were a little vague, but not a lot. And once I looked at that, I said, well, I'd be comfortable covering a team that I hadn't seen in person. And I said, okay, yeah, I'll be comfortable because I've seen some of the guys before. So that's what led me here in terms of what my experiences and things of that nature. But no, it's been fun so far. I mean, it's been fun, and this is fun to me. I know that some people stress over this, and but it's like, us as journalists, we want a story.
Absolutely.
This is a story. I mean, this is a story. This isn't anything else. This is a story. So yeah, this is from this, between this and driving back from Flagstaff and seeing a row of cactus where I had to get out of the car and pull over and take pictures. This has been fun.
I will say, Duane, as far as being a new reporter joining a new team, you picked a good time to do it because there's a new coach, there's going to be a new GM, there's 8 new players that are likely going to get minutes in this coming season. As far as they're concerned, you may as well have been here forever. You're just as new as they are.
Yeah. Everybody's new. Everybody's new. That's why everybody looks around. They're like, "Well, he's new. She's new.
Absolutely,
he's new. They're new. So everybody's new. So I'm
exactly.
good with it.
You got a nice chance to get to know all of them right at the beginning here. So thank you so much for joining us. I hope we can have you on again. This has been really fun, and I think you're going to have a lot of great insight on the team in this season. With your background and coming to it with a new, fresh perspective on the team. So we're really looking forward to reading all your stuff. Make sure everyone go follow him on Twitter. That's at Duane Rankin. Duane has been writing some great stuff for AZCentral. He's going to be covering the team throughout the season. Are you going to be traveling to the away games, Duane?
I am. I just didn't go to the preseason games.
I don't blame you.
We made that decision right as I took the job. They were saying, well, hey, we're not going to go. But I tell you, I wish I was there tonight because I would be on the hunt trying to figure. I'd be on the hunt trying to figure out, hey, what happened? Why? When? What? How?
Mm-hmm.
But it's okay. But no, I will be on the road with the team all regular season. So that should be fun. It's just funny. Obviously, they open up against Dallas, and in the next 2 road games, Denver and Golden State, and it's like it's like, man, this and plus we didn't even talk about. Is Booker going to be back? I assume he will.
I think so.
And that I assume he will. I mean, I tell you that and along with the cactus and this story today, seeing Devin Booker shooting left-handed, that was fascinating. That was absolutely fascinating.
It was.
I just couldn't believe that he had gotten that good with his offhand. I mean, it was fascinating to see that. That kid's really talented. I mean, there's no question about it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Duane. I'm really looking forward to reading all your stuff throughout the season.
Thank you guys for having me on.
All right, let's all watch the Tyler Ulis revenge game.
Wow, the Tyler Ulis game. I'm definitely down in.
All right, Duane. Thank you so much for joining.
All right, guys. Appreciate y'all.
Hey, Tim Tompkins here from the Sun Solar Panel Podcast. So you just got done listening to the Timeline Podcast. Mike and Sam do a great job. I listen to every single episode. And if you're like me, you want even more Sun's content. So since you've wrapped up this episode of the Timeline, head on over and subscribe to the Sun Solar Panel Podcast. Chances are we have a new episode that you will enjoy. The Sun Solar Panel Podcast, available on iTunes, Google Play, and basically anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Sugar Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran, Marvelous Marvin Hagler, and Thomas Hearns. Legends, whose four-way rivalry defined one of the greatest eras in boxing history. Relive their decade of dominance in the new Showtime sports documentary, The Kings, a 4-part series premiering Sunday, June 6th, only on Showtime.